All right. Woo, I'm loud. Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome everyone here. We have a great turnout at the Lieutenant Colonel Clifton Center. And hello to everybody who will be viewing us in the next day or so. Hopefully week 2 is going well. You're drinking lots of water, getting lots of sleep, physical activity, and orange and green fruits and vegetables. Just a couple reminders for those who are watching this. For everybody, and the team captains will get an email this afternoon reminding you that the video will be up by tomorrow, by Friday. A few people were asking me about where I give the link. If you click on that link, it'll take you directly. If not, it's quite a journey to get through the city website to find it. But when you get it, you're going to see a poster that says Lunch and Learn Sessions. Just make sure you scroll underneath. Week 1 video is there. Week 2 will be up on Friday. Other than that, for our weekly challenges, last week it was about, help me out, what did we do the first week for a weekly challenge? An exercise, a new exercise, right. So trying on a new exercise, hopefully you guys had a few new ones there that you tried. I know I tried some yoga that I haven't done before. This week is actually about, because yesterday was the Bell Let's Talk, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to go on the website, take a look around there. Anybody been on the website, see? There's some stories on there, there's resources. Yesterday was January 30th, and if my husband was right with the tweet that he heard this morning, Bell Canada, I believe, made $7 million. Did anybody else hear that amount?
Just a little over 7.
Just a little over 7 million. So congratulations, and hopefully that will go to help many, many people. And we're also here today to hopefully help also with mental wellness and well-being, and we all can be working on that all the time. And we like to thank very much for Saskatchewan Health Authority. We have Kristen Reinhardt here today helping, and she is from the Adult Mental Health, correct?
Correct.
So I'm going to turn this over. Enjoy. Remember, don't hesitate to ask questions. I know there was a handout given, and at any point we can kind of discuss and learn from each other. Thank you, and thanks, Krista.
Thank you. So as Val mentioned, I'm Kristen Reinhardt. I'm a social worker with the Adult Mental Health Program with the Saskatchewan Health Authority. It's kind of a mouthful now that it's transitioned provincially, but and I'm a hair toucher, so hopefully I don't cause too much distraction. So welcome everyone, and hopefully everyone got their handouts and can follow along. So what I'm going to touch on today is looking at a wellness approach to depression. And like Val mentioned, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is I'll talk about depression, but it also is some really practical strategies to deal with overall well-being, and some really day-to-day things that we can all do to practice self-care and take the best care that we can of ourselves. So what we're going to look at today is what is depression, what keeps that cycle of depression going. We'll take a look at some characteristics of depression as well, then some causes of depression. We'll move into then the strategy part, and that's where we look at healthy goal setting, and then looking at kind of getting beyond the blues from a wellness perspective. And then finally, we'll look at if you're looking for additional support, if you're seeking services, where can you reach out, where can you seek those services? So it's a really ambitious agenda for our short time together, but we'll hopefully get through as best we can. So what is depression? So there's a quote that I took. I run a group with the mental health program. It's called the Core Changeways group. And this was a quote that came from there. And so this participant said, it feels like you're falling off a cliff into a black hole. Sometimes it feels like no matter what you do, it doesn't make any difference anyway. So why bother? It's hard to accept what is happening to you. I thought I might never get my memory and concentration back. Then what can I do? Sometimes I felt like my brain was scrambled. Recognizing it was the depression helped. Keep hope, get moving, even when you don't feel like it can get better. So depression can be more than just a low mood. And so sadness and suffering, they're all typical parts of life, right? I mean, we all experience that from time to time. So when we look at depression, it's usually characterized by an extended period of low mood, inability to feel pleasure in activities that used to bring us joy, and a reduction in activity level. And with that comes low motivation. So it can have a big impact on your whole being. It's one of those things that, you feel isolated or can feel isolated, that you're the only one. And what the research, when I was looking at this, more than 4% of adults are depressed at any given time, and more than 15% of adults at some point in their lives will experience a form of depression or a period of depression. And it's not a sign of weakness, for sure. That's not often a stigma that comes with depression is weakness, and that is definitely a stigma, and one that we're trying to educate and challenge. All right, so moving on to what keeps depression going. And so that when we look at what kind of keeps that cycle going, that can be unhelpful thinking patterns. So anytime we become more emotional, whether that's some anxiety or depression or low mood, our thinking tends to become biased, right? There's some faulty thinking patterns that occur, and that's kind of the way we view ourselves or view the world around us, view others, and often our thinking patterns are not helpful, and they're biased. So often, with our thoughts, we can have thoughts, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're true, right? And that's the big one, is to keep that in mind, is that thoughts are thoughts, not fact, right? And then that leads into unhealthy behavior. So that's when we stop doing things we used to enjoy, our motivation decreases, we pull back from maybe our support systems or our friends or our activities that we used to enjoy. And then there's unintended consequences from that trickle down from that behavior. So on the next slide, it talks about it, or it just kind of shows a nice diagram, I guess, and I didn't make that. It comes from a website called Psychology Tools Online, or psychologytools.com online. But it shows how you have your emotions, which then you try to cope with those emotions, and that's where those unhelpful actions or responses come in. So isolating, pulling back, low motivation, staying home, not doing the activities you used to enjoy, and then fewer good things happen, fewer opportunities to feel good about yourself. So those are the consequences. And then if you see on the bottom, it just cycles back, right? So then more emotions come, more efforts to try to cope with that, and then more responses, and it just keeps cycling around. All right, so major characteristics of depression. So this breaks down into a few different categories. So if we look at feelings, that's often sadness, emptiness, or this feeling of despair. An inability to enjoy activities. Again, I've talked about that we normally, that gives us pleasure. Feeling unusually anxious, angry, or irritable. That can be one that kind of throws people off. We sometimes don't associate anger or irritability with maybe some depressive symptoms. And it can be feelings of unworthiness, guilt, and shame. And often with the guilt, it can be guilt about not feeling well, right? We kind of we carry that as a shameful, right? And so I just want to point out too, is that not all of these characteristics have to be present. And also it's possible to have a number of these characteristics and not be depressed, right? And so I just want to point that out so that if you're like, oh, check, I'm not saying you're depressed. So just keep that in mind, because I think at any given time we can all check some of those off. I know I can. So just a little note there. Moving on to the physical functioning. So lack of energy, feeling exhausted, feeling tired. Fatigue is often very common with depression. You can have weight fluctuation, so that can be either weight gain or weight loss, and not intentional, right? So it's not an intentional weight fluctuation. Often sleep disruption too. So that's either increased sleep, so you're sleeping more than you typically do, or you're more like that insomnia, not being able to either fall asleep or stay asleep. So or you're waking in the night and having a tough time falling back to sleep. So sleep is often a characteristic that comes along with depression. Then some behaviors. So again, the tendency to do very little. Nothing really seems enjoyable. Withdrawal from social activities. A change in eating habits can be a common one as well. So that's either way. So you're either eating more, and all of this, remember that it's a change, right? So we want to look for any change in those behaviors. And usually people eat more not out of a desire to eat, right? It becomes more of an emotional or a way to cope. So speeding up, slowing down, so that can be either like your speech or you're walking or you're just, you're sluggish, you're moving slow. And oftentimes that becomes visible to other people. They're noticing it as well. Lack of exercise, and letting those kind of day-to-day tasks or chores, those sorts of things kind of build up. So that can be some of the behaviors. And then if we move into the thoughts, that's when we have, trouble concentrating. Our memory is affected. I often think it's like this brain fog, right? You're kind of just, I don't know if anyone has ever experienced that, where it's just like, you're just sort of, you're there, but you just have such a hard time kind of maintaining any sort of focus. Being easily overwhelmed, that can be a very common one too with your thoughts. It's just, there's so much and it's overwhelming. It becomes too big. Focusing on the negative, so you're filtering out the positives in your life, and the negative aspects are kind of become big, right? They kind of take over, and we filter out what is going well in our lives. And then sometimes the thoughts become, not always, but become, you have thoughts of harm or harming yourself, harming others, can be a thought that can occur with depression as well. All right, so when we look at what causes depression, the research suggests there's not one cause of depression. It's not like this is the cause, or it's more of risk factors, I guess, is more what we tend to call that. And people experience depression for different reasons. It looks different for different people. We might have similarities, but it is very different for us as individuals. So, but we look at the factors: environmental, personal, and biological. And I kind of gave some examples under each of what risk factors there might be under each of those. So environmental, so that can be anything like any major life transition or event. So moving, financial strain, a death of a loved one or a friend, you name it, like kind of those bigger transitions in life, those bigger events. Having few rewards in your life. So the major life events, the stress is building up, right? But the rewards are not equivalent. So you've got stress, but rewards are down here. Isolation. So that's more looking at like either you don't have an adequate support system, or they're not supportive, and there's that isolation factor. Personal, so that is where we look at the thinking patterns that we talked about, the negative thinking patterns. Gender, from the research, it says that women are more at risk or vulnerable to depression than men. Not to say men don't experience depression, but women, there's a higher rate of depression with women. So, personal history, so that is things like your child raising years, like when you were a child, can be trauma. It's all sorts of things around your personal history that can factor into that. Biological, so that's looking at nutrition. What is your nutrition like? There's a big link between poor nutrition and depressive symptoms. Family history, and I'm careful when I say that because my great-great-grandmother suffered from some depression. That means I'm at a higher risk. It's more of a vulnerability, right? When there's a family lineage there, you can be at more vulnerable to that, but not saying, you're gonna have depression. No, that's not at all it, but just that vulnerability piece. Physical ailments, that's a biggie when it comes to biological factors. So that's things like illness, right? So anytime you have some physical concerns, you're more vulnerable to depression. So physical and that emotional, mental well-being, kind of they're so strongly linked. And then lack of exercise. Definitely, when we're not moving our bodies, we can experience low mood or depression. All right, so that is that. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm breezing through this. Yes?
Can you explain like what a reward would be?
So a reward would be like healthy things that are healthy for that, almost like a treat to yourself, right? So like, and I'll get it more into that for sure. That's a really good question. But looking at what am I doing to replenish, right? How am I replenishing myself? So that can be, I mean, it's not necessarily, well, I'm going to go on a cruise tomorrow. Well, no, right? But looking at, am I doing things that are enjoyable? And really, it's about self-care, treating yourself, that kind of thing. How are you treating yourself? How are you taking care of yourself? Is that equivalent to, like, to balance out that stress? Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. But we do get more into that for sure, but that is a good question. Oh, we're into it now. Thank you for the segue. So, looking at strategies for improving your lifestyle. So, this is, I mean, I was focusing primarily on depression. I want to move more into, this is certainly pertainable to depression, but just overall, right? Just taking care of ourselves day to day. So again, ask yourself the question, what am I doing to replenish my energy? I think that's such a key question to ask yourself every day. Right? Because it's like a car. Once that fuel is gone, the car's not going to go, right? Same with us. Once that fuel is gone, we're not going to go. So I think that's a really powerful question to ask ourselves regularly. What have I done today to replenish? If not, your energy level is going to drop. So tip the balance, right? So we want to increase those life-enhancing factors. So looking at, like I had mentioned before, the exercise. And that's not, I'm going to go run a marathon tomorrow and get some exercise. That's, could I take the stairs? Could I park a little further from the store? Like, even just things like that. And I think we can get overwhelmed with what that looks like for us, right? Is, well, I can't go run a mile. Well, that's okay, right? But what can I do? What is in my control? So looking at appropriate diet, and especially if we're going through a period of stress or a period of depression, our appetite can fluctuate, like I had mentioned. And so looking at, maybe we're not eating the 3 meals a day like we typically did if we're in a period of stress or depression. And but when I do eat, is it something of nutritional value, right? So really looking at that is, can I grab a handful of almonds as opposed to Coke, or like just looking at those little things. I don't have an appetite, but what can I eat that is of some nutritional value? Watch your caffeine intake, and that's a big one. And I'm such a coffee drinker, and so this really resonates for me. But caffeine can really affect your mood, right? So taking a look at how much coffee did I drink today? I'm feeling jittery, or I'm feeling something's just a little bit off, right? So all of this is just increasing your overall awareness, getting to know yourself and kind of what makes your moods fluctuate. Sleep is so important. It's just one of the most important things when it comes to our mental health. Am I getting enough sleep, right? And so looking at things like keeping as regular of bedtime as you can, waking time as you can, and I mean, life happens, and that we're going to be up late some nights and go to bed early others and sleep in, and that's okay. But overall, looking at, am I getting a consistent amount of sleep, and trying to keep as routine as you can with that. Also, look at things like bedtime, like slowing down, because our bodies can be tired. Physically, we're ready for bed, but mentally, are we still like replaying the day, or we're looking at tomorrow already, and we're not there, right? But we're replaying it, and we're thinking about it, and we're ruminating about it. So I always say, like, an hour before bed, what are you doing to kind of bring yourself down, kind of a relaxation routine. And I know that's made a huge difference for me, is giving myself time to just slow down from the day. I think that's really important, especially in today's society. We're just go, go, go. A lot of us are just here, there, we're on to the next thing before the first thing's even finished, right? So giving us time to really slow down.
Kristen, I just wanted to ask about that, about phones and this digital. Like, there's lots of research and things saying, it's not good for your brain to be seeing that before bed.
Right.
But at the same time, it's a very easy thing, because you think you're slowing down, you're just going to look at Facebook or...
This is more my personal opinion. I think it can be very stimulating, especially like not even, you might be just looking at Facebook and it seems really calming, but even the light of it, right? You're trying to, and I always say, have your room dark, right? Like a dark room so that you're used to like that darkness, and that's a sign to your body that it's bedtime. So if you're in the dark and you got your phone in your face or your laptop, even that light itself is stimulating. So I always caution people, I don't have any research in front of me that suggests that, but I would caution people about phone use right before bed, and give yourself kind of an hour and a half before bed where it's like, I'm going to put the phone away. And that's hard to do. I'm guilty of it too. But it's certainly something to be mindful of. And then understanding the value of fun. And I think this is an important one. And I know I get some looks when I suggest this to people, because it's like, I don't feel good. My mood is not good. I don't have motivation. I don't want to do that. I can't even think about having fun. I'm spent the day crying, right? So it's hard for people to think of having fun when they don't feel good. But it's such an important part. Because having fun actually gives you more energy than it takes. It may seem initially like this is work to get out and have some fun. And fun can look different for different people, right? So it's finding your definition of fun, right? And but it's such an important part. And even asking yourself the question, when was the last time I had some fun, right? Like really had some fun in my life. And a lot of people can't often answer that. It's like, I don't even know when the last time. So is that something missing in your life to pay attention to? All right, so now we're going to move into looking at goals and goal setting. And again, this speaks to when we don't feel like doing anything. And I often say to people, when their mood is low, you're not going to feel like doing anything. I'm telling you right now, the motivation is not going to be there, right? And that's a shift for people to get their head around, that we often wait for the motivation to increase and then be like, okay, now I want to do something, right? And our natural tendency is to curl in. And so what I caution people is, don't wait for that motivation to come when we're experiencing a low mood or depression or a period of stress, right? We often have to do and take those steps, and hopefully that motivation will increase as you do more. We'll talk more about that. So engaging in positive behavior anyway, even if you don't feel like it. The rewarding activities, sometimes it can be hard to think about anything you enjoy. So I encourage people, think of things that you enjoy doing when you're not in a low mood, right? It's just like when you go on the highway and you get a flat tire, right? It's like, probably, do I have CAA? Do I have spare tire? Like, you prepare for some of those things before you go out on the road, right? So that you're not in the situation and then having to pull out these tools and figure out what to do, right? So have a list, think about it, write a list out of enjoyable activities so that when you are experiencing low motivation, you can pull it out and it's more accessible for you. So when you're setting some goals for yourself, so some questions to consider when you're looking at enjoyable activities and goal setting. How many of these things have you done recently? Which ones could you do more often? So mood problems are often caused partly by not doing many enjoyable activities. I think I sound like a broken record with that. So obviously I'm a believer in the positive rewards and enjoyable activities. And could this be true of you, right? Could this be true of you? So what we want to look at when we set some goals for ourselves is there's two types of goals. So one is the ultimate goal. So that's something that you cannot reach in one step, right? And that's when we become overwhelmed. And that can lead into low mood. So any goal that it's like, ask yourself, can I do this in one step? If the answer is no, the goal is too big, right? So ultimate goals can be broken down into smaller steps, which we call immediate goals. So that immediate goal is a goal you can reach in one single step towards that ultimate goal, right? So maybe it's, my ultimate goal is to go swimming. I want to get involved in doing some lane swimming at the pool. but I don't even know what time swimming's at, right? So maybe an immediate goal would be, I need to phone the pool and just see when they offer lane swimming. Check, right? And then you get a little more motivation. And then my next step is, do I own a bathing suit? No, actually. I got a hole in the butt. Like, I got to get a new one, right? Maybe that's the next step. I'm going to go and get myself a bathing suit. Check, right? But when you look at, I'm going to go lane swimming, right? Like, I don't even have a bathing suit. I don't know when the times are. And then we don't do it. We isolate, we pull back, we don't do it. So we want to look at setting some immediate goals for ourselves that we can achieve. And that's, once you kind of check that off the list, then we get a sense of satisfaction, a sense of success, and then increased mood. So the next slide kind of breaks that down a little more. So low mood, low energy, few accomplishments, even lower mood. And set small goals, succeed, more motivation, set slightly higher goals. We feel better. Does that make sense to people? Okay. So I like this acronym, and this is part of the group. I run that Core Changeways group at the Mental Health Clinic, which is my absolute favorite group to run. And the acronym is SMART. So when you're looking at setting goals, use the acronym SMART. So that's being specific, right? So when you're looking at your immediate goal, do you know exactly what you are supposed to do? If not, work on defining that, right? Be as clear as you can. So be very specific in that goal. Like I said, maybe it's, I'm going to phone the pool tonight at 7, right? So be as clear as you can with that. Be specific. And it has to be your own, right? So it's something you're doing for you. If it's like, well, I'm going to go to the pool with Frank, well, then your goal becomes dependent on Frank, right? And then if Frank can't go to the pool, you're not going. And so is this my own goal? It has to be something for you, not dependent on others. Action-oriented. So, of course, pretty self-explanatory. We have to do something. And again, that's the doing, taking that step. And not to feel or think a certain way. So if my goal is I'm going to go for a nice walk around my block at 4:30 today, and then all of a sudden it's like a complete snowstorm, and you're out walking, probably not going to be a nice walk, but you went for the walk, right? So if we put a feeling on it, and then it doesn't end up nice, you failed, right? There's that mentality that, well, that wasn't fun, that didn't work, that was not a success. So be careful when you're outlining what that goal is, that you're not putting a feeling on it, how you want to feel, more on that action, I did it. Realistic, you must have a clear and achievable finish line. So, I'm going to go for a walk. Right? When? Right? And what happens with that is that we tend to procrastinate then. It's like, well, it could be in the next 18 months, right? So clear finish line. And time defined. Again, that kind of goes back to the realistic. Should have a time frame for completion, right? So I like that, and I think that's something handy you can keep with you when you're looking at setting some immediate goals for yourself. Looking at time, I know I'm just about out, but just to go on a little bit about, so caring for yourself is really important, right? Even when you feel good enough, right? Often we kind of like, oh, I feel good. I don't need to make goals, or I don't need to. I can stay up late this week, or I can skip breakfast, or we kind of start to, I feel good enough, right? And so it's important for good mental and physical health to keep that self-care, goal setting, good lifestyle choices, especially when you feel good, right? So that it becomes natural for you when you don't feel so good. All right, so by continuing to manage your life when you feel well, you can enhance your physical, psychological potential, increase your enjoyment for life overall, and then reduce the impact of energy draining crisis, right? So it kind of reduces the impact when we do experience some stress. All right, so I talked about awareness, right? So being aware at an earlier point. So all of a sudden we're not up here and our stress level is here and we have nowhere to go with it, right? So we want to start to be aware of what is kind of some of my signs that, you know what, maybe I need to start taking a look at this, or I'm not feeling so well emotionally. And so the earlier you can become aware of that, the quicker you can act, right? And especially if you know you're coming up to a stressful period in your life that might cause a change in your mood, whether it's, sometimes an anniversary of a loved one's passing, or you know that you're going to be moving in 6 weeks and that's going to cause some stress, or you're changing jobs. Like when you have, and not always can we predict, life happens, right? But if you know you're coming into a period of stress that might affect your mood, be aware of it, and then kind of almost like take a look at what can I put into place to kind of ensure that I'm taking good care of myself as I go through that. Sometimes we need to lighten up on our responsibilities, right? So especially if you're getting a bunch of new responsibilities, sometimes there's some give and take. So if you know you're going to have extra responsibilities, you might have to be flexible on some of the other ones until that transition happens. Again, keep up with your self-care. Can't stress it enough. Self-care is the be-all, end-all. It's so, so important that we're taking care of ourselves. Again, the relax some of your standards, that kind of goes back to the responsibility piece. Look at what is essential versus non-essential. Can we lighten up on some of the non-essential standards or responsibilities? Because stress can, it's a big one for our mental health. So again, awareness, huge. Okay, now finally, where can I get help? So there's different areas. So I work with the mental health clinic. I actually took some magnets. I don't know if I'm supposed to, but I took some magnets. This is our centralized intake. So please feel free to take a magnet. This is a toll-free number. So this will take you, if you do call this number, it would take you to the intake worker, who then would do an intake and talk with you on the phone about what services the mental health clinic can provide, can talk about groups. If anybody's interested, a lot of the material I took today is from our Core Changeways program, which we offer at the mental health clinic. So if you're interested in delving more into, I know I did a very quick overview, then absolutely call and request the Core Changeways group. It's a fabulous group. Sometimes we have an employee and family assistance program, or EFAP, through our work. So it could be something to look into if they can provide some counseling services through your work. It's anonymous. It's not your work providing that service, but they contract that service out. So something to keep in mind. Community resources, that can be even things like if you're affiliated with a church, taking a look at what services they can provide. Different agencies provide different groups and support and whatnot in the community. There's also, if you're computer savvy, there's some websites that I think are really helpful. And I listed 2 of my favorites there. And they have lots of resources, lots of kind of things you can read through, information, all sorts of stuff on these websites, very good information. And then there's also provincially an online therapy. Again, that's for people who are okay with computer use. The University of Regina offers an online therapy. So you're connected with a counselor, but it's all through either phone or computer. And it's called the Wellbeing Course for Mental Health. I put the website there, but I also brought paper copies with the phone number and all the information as well. And I've heard excellent feedback from this program as well. So there's some ideas if you want additional information or additional support. There's some ideas for you. I feel like I kind of breezed through that. All right, any
questions before I... All right. Well, thank you very much. That was awesome. Lots of great information there. And I love that idea that we all should be working on self-care all the time, right?
Yes.
And I just watched a video last night while I was on the treadmill to get my points. And it was about self-love, being a very important of self-care. To love ourselves, and I always say to someone, to turn it around, if I was the friend, what would I say to myself, right? So we're hard on ourselves, you know, celebrate all, you're here. We're working on a lot of the self-care right
Absolutely.
now with the Wellness Challenge. So thank you for that. For those who are watching, I'm hoping this is going to be okay. Would we be able to then put this on our website because they weren't here today?
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
So I will get any of this information that we shared today on the website so those at home can enjoy it and learn from it. So thank you very much and good luck. Continue. There's a lot of questions about the Aquatics Center. There's an email coming out to try to explain those passes. You're going to actually get a document. Each participant gets 4 free passes that they can use at the Aquatics Center. You'll have to print those off yourselves or somebody in your team. But if you have questions, I'm sure I'm going to be having lots come through my email. Just give me an email and I'll try to clarify. Okay, thank you and have a great day, everybody.